About 7 years ago, NXT gave us an event called Nxt Arrival, and it was a lot of firsts. It was the first ever live NXT event, it was the first event streamed live on the WWE Network, and it was the first ladder match in the history of NXT. Now, 7 years later, it gives us another first. It is the first in a new series on this channel called Nxt Rewind. Let's talk about it. What's going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's Spaz Phoenix, the YWC Reality Check, and that's right! Starting another brand new series on this channel, and we'll see where it goes. You want NXT? I will give you more NXT. Do I want NXT? Do I want to give you more NXT? Yes. Yes, I do. And quite frankly, I don't know when I'm going to put this up. It's the tail end of February as I'm recording this. We are still very much in the COVID era. We are still very much in the Thunderdome / CWC era. So I wanted to get to some old Full Sail vibe, some old full arena vibe, and some old NXT when we first fell in love with it. So what I'm going to do, and I don't know how long it's going to go for, you know how things go on this channel, I'm going to go through all of the NXT takeovers. So obviously I start with the one that, even according to Triple H, doesn't count as a takeover, and that's NXT Arrival. Obviously we would get NXT takeover proper the following event after this one, but it is NXT Arrival, Thursday, February 27th, 2014. Remember when NXT was on a Thursday? Live from Full Sail University, obviously in Winter Park, Florida, and according to Wikipedia, I cannot confirm or deny this, obviously, because Full Sail being the smaller venue, etc., there were 400 plus in attendance. Now, I have to put a little caveat on this. As I went through Wikipedia trying to put my notes together for this, all of the Full Sail events, all of the preliminary takeover events that took place in Full Sail are all just listed as 400 plus. When we get to the Barclays Center, and when we get to, obviously, up here in Toronto and all that, we'll get more accurate attendances, but all the Wikipedia entries for all of the Full Sail events just say 400 plus, so that's a bit of a bummer, isn't it? As I said in the intro, it's the first NXT live event, because all the shows were taped at the time. It's the first live event on the WWE Network as we headed towards WrestleMania of that year, and for a while, it was the only NXT event not called TakeOver. Now, currently we've had, you know, Great American Bash, Halloween Havoc, Super Tuesday, and all those types of things that were what I came to know as elevated episodes of NXT, but this is the first one, or sorry, I should say the only one, under the sort of TakeOver banner. This set the template for TakeOver. Then we got TakeOver as the next show, and then everything else was a TakeOver after that. Fatal 4-Way, Rival, The End, etc., etc., etc. I will say, going back to the small venue of Full Sail for an event like this, but with crowds, especially still right now as we came out of the COVID era, out of the no crowd era. We are currently, as I record this, they're still doing NXT at the CWC, which is obviously just the WWE PC made to look different. But we did start the COVID era with the empty Full Sail stuff, and that was really rough. So to turn this on, the immediate first thing you notice is the rabid, world famous Full Sail crowd. Now we're going to get to later on when the first time TakeOver wasn't in Full Sail, when it went over to the Barclays Center, and when TakeOver Brooklyn happened, and there was a little bit of an actual rift between the fans in Brooklyn and the fans at Full Sail, because Full Sail fans owned this brand for a long time, and it was kind of a beautiful thing to see, so much so that when it went anywhere else, the crowd seemed to legitimately be offended. That's how invested they were in the brand. And the other thing too that you get from this crowd is the NXT crowd, especially in the early days, they came in as sort of the opposite of what we do here on the internet. They came in not wanting to hate it, not wanting to nitpick it, not wanting to pull it apart. They came in with every intention of enjoying the show that they were there to see. Now that's a lot of hyperbole coming from me, especially considering how wrestling fans are today, but they came in genuinely wanting to enjoy a good show, and they knew they were on the precipice, especially in this show being the first one. They knew they were on the precipice, I can speak, I swear, of a brand new thing. So when the show starts off and there's lasers and smoke and the lights are out and da-da-da. The other thing I love I love how much they use the smoke machines as counter for pyro. I don't think they were ever allowed to use pyro in Full Sail. I think they got those little pyro boxes to stand beside the winners of the Dusty Cups when the Dusty Cup came around. But other than that, I think for a long ass time there was a thing about them not being able to use pyro in Full Sail because it was such a small venue. But we do start off the show, lights are dark, and the lasers are going through the smoke, and it's all very 2014. Triple H is in the ring before the lights even come up, doing the "We are NXT and we are the next generation" and rah rah rah, and he's done it a couple of times, and it's good, and he's done it at the points where it made sense. He did it at the first ever live event here. He did it at the first time they were in a big arena when they opened up the Barclays Center. People that overinflate Triple H as this guy who, he just wants to put his thumbprint on everything. Well, he, like NXT and the PC and everything like that led to where we're at right here, right now, was his vision. I have no problem with him wanting to be out there because he's not, I don't take it as him being out there bragging. He is out there as sort of this medium because he's out there, and he always refers to the NXT stars as his kids, which, I mean, people have different opinions of that. The brand is his baby, and whatever, and he's literally bringing you this brand on a plate, saying, "Look at how cool this is. I hope you enjoy it." And I don't think that's any kind of bad thing. And then the other thing that I had forgotten about this show is because it was on a Thursday when NXT was back in the day. This didn't have any big, huge video package open or anything like that to get us started. It was just the generic old NXT entrance. I think the song was called "Callin' For Me," but I don't know, and I didn't bother looking it up because I'm special like that. But it was just the weekly intro, and it was the intro when the roster was so small that every star that flashed across the screen for a couple seconds had their name played underneath. Imagine if NXT tried to do that now. Now, you're putting out the first, and I'm going to call this a pay-per-view, even though it wasn't. It was an elevated episode, as we say, but this would set the template for TakeOver. So I'm going to be loose with my terminology here, but I'm going to say it's the first ever match on the first ever NXT pay-per-view. So what do you give them? You give them something that we could very well see here in 2021, 7 years later on SmackDown, which is Sami Zayn versus Cesaro. Now, for a bunch of these matches going forward, and it's as much as I can look up, and it's as much as I can Wikipedia. But if it's a big match like this, I'm gonna try and do sort of a how did we get here? So how did we get here? Sami Zayn debuted on NXT May 22nd, 2013, and scored an upset win over Cesaro. Now Wikipedia says it was his second win of the night. I don't know who else he fought that night, so I can't really tell you. But he did debut. He did get an upset win over Cesaro. Cesaro came back for a rematch. He won that rematch. Sami Zayn asked for a rematch. They had a 2 out of 3 falls match, which Cesaro also won. Now, you figure the 2 out of 3 falls match is the rubber match because it's a more definitive match. It's like you have 2 chances in a row to get a victory in that match at that particular time. So a 2 out of 3 falls match for a weekly wrestling feud would be the end. Sami Zayn, being the underdog at the time, which is something we can't really imagine these days, sort of became obsessed, sort of became... It sort of became his albatross. It became his Moby Dick to get either a win over Cesaro or at least earn his respect, because Cesaro's very much a dick at this point in time. Cesaro saw his obsession, thought it was funny, and declined a match. And then Triple H intervened, as he did quite a bit back in the day. Triple H was, even though they mentioned later on in the night that JBL is the general manager, which I did not remember at all. You saw Triple H doing a lot of general manager type stuff at this point in time, which I didn't mind, because that was NXT sort of opening up the curtain a little bit and letting who's actually in charge of this, whose baby this actually is, seep into the storyline. Triple H intervened and said, actually, yeah, you are going to have a match, and it's going to be at I was going to say TakeOver, goddamn, at Arrival. Now, the match itself, we're going to get into. Now, I will say, also going forward, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into a lot of these matches, there may be a couple cuts in this video. I don't think I can sit down and do the whole show straight the way through, especially, as I say, we're going to get into later pay-per-views that are much longer pay-per-views, etc. This was a very nice, short, concise pay-per-view to watch, actually. But first thing that hits you is the intros. Now, intro-wise, Sami Zayn currently has the ska theme and the boot bopping out to the ring like he does, and it fits his obnoxious current character. But he's got like generic Rock 5 as his entrance music here. And the other thing that I hadn't remembered at the time, so this is a big walk down memory lane for me, is this is when Cesaro was part of the We the People thing. So he was, not only did he have that music with the Don't Tread on Me flag as part of his trump, but he was doing the Hand on Heart, We the People, and the crowd were into it. I will say, the crowd through this entire match, the dueling chants of We the People, Sami Zayn, We the People, Sami Zayn was really good. I don't want to say that it was insane, because there's a whole bunch of puns I could do with that, and it's not a huge big full arena or stadium. It is the small excuse me, it is the small Full Sail crowd, but it's lingering and it's long lasting and it's really good. Collar and elbow tie-up and a toss down by Cesaro to start a front slam by Cesaro, and a little bit of paintbrushing just to piss off Sami Zayn. A side headlock by Cesaro, a headlock takeover by Zayn, a dropkick by Cesaro, a mule kick by Zayn, and into a face lock of his own. Headlock scissor by Zayn, blocked by Cesaro. Sorry, a head scissor by attempt by Sami Zayn is blocked by Cesaro. A suicide sent on by Sami, and a backbreaker by Cesaro. Cesaro tosses Sami Zayn into the guardrail and then into the steps. Cesaro gives him a headlock against the edge of the guardrail. So he's in a headlock, but he's not using his own arm for the headlock. He's using the metal guardrail, and it wasn't the padded WWE big block things. It was the old school, the metal wrought iron guardrails that we like to see. So it is just literally him choking him with a piece of reverse guillotine, almost, except it's not a blade, so I don't know why I said that. Moving on, right hands by Sami, who eats the guardrail again. Cesaro stomps on the head, and there's a hangman into the guardrail again. The guardrail is really Cesaro's best friend in this entire thing, isn't it? So he's worked on the head, he's worked on the midsection. Sami Zayn tries to go through, and this is a beautiful move that I hadn't forgotten, but it just made me really happy because I haven't seen it in a whole long time. The running suicide dive that he did from the floor through the turnbuckles across the corner to the other bit of floor that he used to do. I used to love that because it was either a mini suicide dive or he turned it into a tornado DDT, which is, if you think of the logistics of that move, it's insane, but it doesn't really matter because Cesaro catches him with an uppercut because why not, really? Now, like I said before, Cesaro has worked on the head, he's worked on the midsection. Now we go to work on Sami Zayn's legs and how. And William Regal, who I should say, Tom Phillips and can't think of his name now, isn't that terrible? Tom Phillips, Byron Saxton, and William Regal on commentary for this show. William Regal on commentary is really good. He's sort of, and yes, they're from the same place, I get it, but he really does set the stage for what Nigel McGuinness's commentary is like now. But he makes a point that Cesaro came into the match with several plans, not just one. He worked on the head, he worked on the midsection, and now, as we're about to talk about, he went in and worked on the legs as well. Cesaro works the leg in the post, he stomps on the knees, a knee bar by Cesaro, a double stomp to the knees by Cesaro, a boot by Cesaro, high knees and a dragon screw leg whip by Cesaro, back to the knee bar again, and several boots by Sami Zayn as he tries to fight back. A leg lariat by Sami Zayn is nice, sort of, I don't know what you want to say. Kind of reminded me of the Rough Rider by Zack Ryder, except it's a lot smoother, and Sami Zayn is able to, the way he sort of throws himself forward, he's able to sell the desperation of the, okay, I finally got a shot in type thing. Cesaro goes back to stomping the knees, another dragon screw by Cesaro, forearms by Zayn, a single leg crab by Cesaro, back and elbow lock, back elbow by Sami Zayn, and he drives, dive to the outside by Sami Zayn that's countered, and then Cesaro gets Sami Zayn and slams him on the ramp. I can speak, I swear. Corner exploder by Zayn and Blue Thunderbomb to follow. Blue Thunderbomb, again, he really is able to sell the fact that he's sort of on one leg. It's out of desperation and it's fully out of sort of an adrenaline rush trying to get out of it. Cesaro kicks out the knee, and then there's a Koji clutch by Sami Zayn, and it's sort of brilliant and sort of not at the same time, because on the one hand, because the Koji clutch uses your leg, how's he able to use his leg that's been battered so much? But also, hey, you wanted to kill my leg, now my leg wants revenge. I don't know, made me laugh. Brock lock by Cesaro, working on the leg once again. Cesaro swing, and it gets countered into a near fall by Sami Zayn. Cesaro swing again by the one leg, and then William Regal goes nuts on commentary telling us how the centrifugal force of the Cesaro Cesaro swing is going to mess up that already messed up leg, which is really nice. Corner uppercut, double stomp to the head, uppercuts by Cesaro, both men trade shots, snap German suplex by Zayn and a running boot by Cesaro, sunset destroyer by Sami Zayn, pop-up uppercut by Cesaro, and a neutralizer gets the win. Now, I'll tell you what I think about this right away, because Sami Zayn is really good at the really, really sympathetic underdog thing, and they didn't go the predictable route here in a bunch of different ways. Number one being is, okay, if the babyface has been beaten on and he's sort of been obsessing and it's making his life go downward because he's got this obsession going on, clearly he gets his redemption here, and he doesn't. And I'm not saying that I'm happy that a sad person continues being sad, but it made it less cookie cutter, which I really, really like. They have a, I should say Cesaro got the win at 22 minutes and 55 seconds, which is, if you consider that it's only a 2-hour show, they gave these guys the ability to be 1/4 of the show, which is really nice. Cesaro goes up the ramp, comes back, picks up Sami Zayn off the ground. They have a big hug afterwards. And this is another thing that I really liked early NXT for. It happened a lot with the Four Horsewomen. It's going to happen in another match we're going to talk about tonight. The fact that they could have these little, like, breaking kayfabe moments where you know you've done something really good and you just get to celebrate it for a second. Now, Cesaro would go on and continue being a heel, obviously. Sami Zayn would go on being a face immediately. But you didn't have somebody in the crowd at that point being like, oh my god, they're breaking, how can they show respect for each other? They're breaking kayfabe, and it's fine, it's whatever. A couple of cool things coming out of this match. It's cool to remember babyface Sami Zayn, because we haven't had babyface Sami Zayn since his heel turn. Interesting, if nothing else, to see the old We the People Cesaro. It was a great, as I said at the beginning of the match, it was a great, if you want one match that's going to set the standard for this is what we want an NXT pay-per-view to look like going forward, this was a great match to do it with. After this, Sami Zayn would go on to feud with Corey Graves, who would mock him for the current losing streak that he's on, which is nice. Remember when Corey Graves was a wrestler and not just banging Carmella? Wasn't that good? Cesaro would immediately go back to the main roster to go on to WrestleMania and win the inaugural Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. And it's nice to mention that Sami Zayn got an ovation after this match, because the crowd at that point in time was Sami Zayn just not their boy, for sure. The standing ovation, and you do see the response, and commentary goes pretty heavy, saying like, oh, this is the biggest place that Sami Zayn's ever competed in, and I'm sure the people that followed him in ROH and all the other places that he's been take a little bit of issue with that. But at the same time, the amount of genuine appreciation on the face of Sami Zayn is a really nice thing to see. WWE let the moment be as far as his standing ovation, which is kind of nice. And this was, I can't say it any other way, this was just a fantastic way to start your first ever show. Now, after that great opening match, what did we have next? What did we have to bring us down? Well, first of all, we got to go to the crowd, because again, these are the shows, and it never really stopped as long as we had crowds. There was always somebody worth mentioning in the crowd. You had the mayor of Orange County, Florida, and the president of Full Sail University, which is nice. People say it's pandering, but literally, here's the people that have said, hey, come do your thing in our city, and the people that have said, hey, please come do your thing in our building. So give them a couple seconds on screen. It's all good. They all, because they're clearly not wrestling people, they all do that sort of half-hearted wave. They don't really know what to do, which is fine. And then we saw a video package on the walking seizure that is Mojo Rawley. Why was Mojo Rawley a thing? People look at Ryback and be like, oh my god, why was Ryback a thing? The way that most people looked at Ryback, I'm not saying that I was a favor of Ryback either, or Skip Sheffield, or whatever the hell. But the way a lot of people would go on to look at Ryback is the way I looked at Mojo Rawley, in a sense, because I get it. Like, I get he's supposed to be like the super 5-hour energy version of like the jock stereotype or whatever. Get hyped, stay hyped. But it was just, like, I don't want to overanalyze it, but it was like, he's unnerving to watch on screen. And he's taking on CJ Parker. And CJ Parker is a hippie. Yay! They make reference, like, they don't play it up so much on this show, but they talk about it a lot on commentary about how he's an advocate and he's a protester for the environment and all that sort of thing. Maybe 7 years ago, they were telling us that, you know, advocates and protesters, and they're coming, whatever you do, they're gonna not like something about you. But right here, he's played off as kind of like a dick. Like, he's played off as that kind of dick that thinks he's the babyface. He's played off as the asshole that thinks he's the hard done by guy in the scenario. And does that not set the trend for 2020, 2021 going forward? The match was something. Collar double tie and a boot and a headlock by Parker, a back body drop by Mojo, who rides it into an armbar. High knee by Parker, left hands and boots in the corner. Mojo eats a turnbuckle, and then he hits the hyperdrive. And I want the hyperdrive to be something really. Hyperdrive should be the name for something like the Canadian Destroyer or the Red Arrow that we're going to talk about later on. That should have a name like Hyperdrive. Hyperdrive was just, he runs and sits on you. Okay, so Mojo Rawley gets the win at a merciful 3 minutes and 25 seconds, and we quickly move on. We get a video package on the, remember the old bubbly, hyper happy, good girl Emma persona, and then we get another video package on the path of destruction that has been laid forth by the current NXT Tag Team Champions, Connor and Victor of the Ascension. Remember when the Ascension was good? Oh yes, the Ascension have torn through everybody. So they're going into tonight's show. They're coming into NXT Arrival to face mystery opponents. And the mystery opponents are Too Cool. Grandmaster Sexay and Scotty Too Hottie. Now, this brings another thing into stark focus, because you saw Cesaro earlier, who's a main roster guy. You saw Too Cool here, who are well beyond being main roster guys in comparison to NXT, but it brings into effect the fact that we had a lot of people come from the main, in the early days, come from the main roster to NXT to interact with them, etc. I think Natalia is another good example of somebody that just came down. And the only reason I mention that is, and the reason I find it really funny is, do you remember when the Wednesday Night War started? And we were leading up to the Survivor Series, and all the brands were invading all the other brands, and it was fine, because that's just what we do, but we had decided to include NXT. So, when Survivor Series comes around, Raw invades SmackDown. Yeah, that happens. SmackDown invades Raw. Yeah, that happens. But either one of them come to invade NXT, and all the AEW heads start throwing their papers in the air and flipping their desks. Oh my god, NXT's cheating to win the war, and da-da-da. I was like, no. It's WWE as a whole. They're a company. They are all the same company, and they're just moving their people around, and they acted like it was a brand new thing, which was hysterical to me. AJ Styles coming to NXT to take on some people, or later on, if you want to say Bayley and Sasha Banks coming back to take on people when they were in their tag team title run. It's not new. This is the very first show, and you've got Cesaro, and you've got the Ascension, and you've got a bunch of people that are going to get involved in later pay-per-views. You've got Natalia, who got involved in the women's title picture, etc. Nobody flipped out on her the way they flipped out about Charlotte Flair. I know we have to hate Charlotte Flair because she's white and blonde. I get it. But it's hysterical to me, as you look through the history of NXT, anytime somebody's come back, the only one that seems to save themselves from it is Finn Balor. Oh, that's right, because people like Finn Balor. Moving on. But I just think it's hysterical, because you get Too Cool, and as Too Cool are coming down to the ring, picture in picture, they do sort of a mini highlight reel in case there's anybody currently watching NXT that doesn't know who Too Cool are, which is fine. And this match was mercifully short too, at around 6.5 minutes. Victor and Christopher start off the match. There's knees by Victor, a shoulder tackle by Connor as well. Mudhole stomp and a big boot. Snap suplex by Victor, a grounded side headlock. Victor stomps the midsection, and there's a rear naked choke. Sorry, jawbreaker by Christopher as he tries to mount a comeback. Right hands by Scotty, a running elbow by Scotty, and a boot and a face buster. He goes for the worm, but it's countered into a hangman by Victor, who follows it up with a lariat, tags in Connor. They hit the Fall of Man and defend their tag team championships. Where will we go from here? Now, it's funny. It's funny what WWE did with the Ascension here, because here fans could talk about it, and you could kind of see it in its loosest possible terms. They weren't replacements, they weren't new versions of, but these were guys sort of in line with. These guys were going to be the new generation, or the current iteration of a team like Warlord and Barbarian, or the Legion of Doom, or Demolition. Problem is they brought them up to the main roster eventually and had all the commentators say, hey, look, these guys are like the Legion of Doom, and these guys are like Demolition, and these guys are like the Warlord and the Barbarian. And And eventually they teamed them up with Stardust, and I mean, Cody Rhodes doesn't associate himself with anything good, so let's just move on. Video package on the NXT Women's Champion Paige. I love Paige to this day. I really do. Look at the amount of crap that has happened to that girl in her life. But here, where she's doing the whole, this is what I am. I know what they want me to do. They want me to, paint my face all pretty and wear bright colors and be more fun. And it's basically she's doing a promo on the old anti-diva gimmick, which is good. But it brings me to another thing, and it brings me to, I love NXT, but not everything they did was perfectly correct. Because they focus in on the crowd, and they're trying to find the notable people in the crowd for a pop and all that sort of thing. And in the crowd, you've got WWE Hall of Famer Ric Flair and current NXT diva Charlotte. Now, first of all, I could make a million different references to the fact that they kept on changing her name. They couldn't decide whether she was Charlotte or Charlotte Flair or Charlotte Flair. But more to the point, and the old belt brings it into focus as well. They still had a very brief period of time. We had the Women's Revolution off the back of NXT, but they still called them the NXT Divas. Doesn't that just rip your heart out a little bit? And then, something that I'm sure twisted a lot of people up, well, Stephanie McMahon came out, and the most bizarre thing in the world is while she's introducing herself and hyping up the show, etc., Stephanie McMahon got a "You've Still Got It" chant. Which, it's Bizarro Land when people are giving a positive response to Stephanie McMahon, other than she's married to Triple H, who created this brand for this show you're all at tonight, which is fine. And she hypes up the historical nature of the show, the fact that it's the first NXT live show, the fact that it's the first show being shown live on the network. And it's like, yeah, we decided to put this show on the network first instead of WrestleMania, which is a compliment in and of itself, but also they were going to put something in before WrestleMania so that you didn't have technical issues at WrestleMania. I was down south with a friend watching WrestleMania on WWE Network, and all I did was watch Twitter and see other people talking about all the technical issues they had. Now, they sort of threw this as the canary in the cave, didn't they? They wanted to do something live, they wanted to get all the kinks out, and I would be able to ignore that if it wasn't for all the reports of all the technical issues people had while watching this show. And then she puts over the women's division and introduces the women that are going to be in the next match. The match is Paige versus Emma. Now, you want to talk about the women's revolution. Everybody wants to put the weight of the entire women's evolution on the four horsewomen of NXT. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Becky, and I like Bayley, and I like Charlotte, and Sasha's there too. But the women's evolution started with the first tournament to crown the first ever NXT Women's Champion, and the first women's champion was Paige, and she defeated Emma in the final. And if you go back and look at that now, you can see all the hallmarks of all the great women's wrestling and the great women's wrestling focus that we get now on NXT, and they try to do it on the main roster as well, and usually fail. But Paige defeated Emma to become the first ever NXT Women's Champion on July 24th of, I'm guessing it's 2013, because we're only in February in 2014. Emma won a number one contendership match on August 7th. We're not going to talk about the fact that it was in some weird talent competition. And she defended her number one contendership status against Natalya on the January 1st episode of NXT. February 12th, the announcement came out that it was going to be her title match, her title opportunity was going to be at Arrival. I keep wanting to say TakeOver. I'm going to stop, I promise. The match itself was really good. Emma's old music is a bit of a bop, if you guys remember her old music. Remember when Tennille Dashwood was in WWE? Paige's music is always great. Paige's music is just always great. The old title, I'm going to reach through my screen right now because of all the stuff that has happened to Paige since this moment, going forward with the tapes and the photos and the Alberto Del Rio stuff and the Sasha Banks ending her career. I'm going to ask that anybody who's going to leave a comment in the comment section, please don't make it about what happened with that old belt. I like a rude joke as much as the next guy, but this I don't think this is where you do it. Anyways, a face-to-face shoving match to start, and mounted shots by Emma, super kick by Paige, a pinning reversal sequence to follow, drop kick by Paige, a scoop slam, a grounded headlock, and a body scissor, back elbows in the corner by Paige, mudhole stomp, takedown by Emma, a catapult into the Emma lock, high knees by Paige, tarantula lock in the ropes by Emma. She hits the Emma sandwich. This is the time where all her moves had like Emma in front of it, so it wasn't like a diving crossbody, it was an Emma sandwich. Surfboard stretch with a post of Beal by the hair by Emma, forearm by Paige, a top rope sunset flip Batista bomb by Emma that gets a better than Batista chant from the crowd, which is always good. They have a bit of a slap fest. There's a lariat by Paige, and then she hits the Paige turner, and she locks in the Scorpion cross lock for the submission victory at 12 minutes 54 seconds. Now, first and foremost, there's a nice show of respect after the match. Once again, Paige goes and finds Emma, picks her up, they have a hug and all that sort of thing. The type of thing that, like I say, the Four Horsewomen would do a lot. They would do it on much larger stages as well. But that little break in the thing, just to be like, yeah, we just killed it. The crowd loved it. We loved it. You know, have that little out of thing moment. Eventually, the Scorpion Crosslock would be renamed to the PTO, which was the Paige Tap Out, which is a little bit on the lame side, but it's fine. Paige would also go and on to the Raw after WrestleMania, as we all know, debut against AJ Lee and get a shock victory for the then Divas Championship, which would then bring in General Manager JBL to tell her she can't be two champions at once. Somebody told the main roster that. Different story, different day. She would come back to NXT to forfeit the title, necessitating a brand new tournament to crown a brand new champion that we're going to talk about on the next show. But it was really good, and the moment for Paige with AJ Lee, which like I say happened on the Raw after Mania, is something that became a focal point of the Paige I don't know where you want to go, documentary, biography, whatever, the Fighting With My Family. I never saw that, and that's how we sort of first got introduced to Zelina Vega, oddly enough, because she was playing AJ Lee at the time, and then Florence Pugh would go on to play Paige in the movie, and, you know, Paige would go on to have a bit of a career, and then have her career ended by Sasha Banks, because Sasha Banks is terrible, and as they say, the show just carries on. But this was fantastic. If you want two nominees, if you want to say it, or two suggestions as to two more people other than the Four Horsewomen that started the women's revolution, you start right here. You start with Paige, you start with Emma, you start with the initial matches for the NXT Women's Championship. Oh yes. After the ladies match, we go to another video package, and say it with me, say it loud and say it proud. WWE and NXT are great at video packages. This one is on Adrian Neville. First of all, it's hysterical now that we see him on AEW as Pac. It's funny to think of him being Neville. It's extra fun to think of him as being Adrian Neville, which is going to apply to somebody else we're going to talk about in just a second. We flip out to the live crowd, we pan the live crowd, and if you just need a punch in the heart and some evidence that life just isn't fair sometimes, in the crowd, front row, enjoying the show, is Pat Patterson and Dusty Rhodes. And that speaks for itself. And the next match is Xavier Woods versus Tyler Breeze. It doesn't happen. It gets called a no contest at about 30 seconds. But I want to get into some flashback stuff here, because you got to remember, this is pre-New Day Xavier Woods. He's coming out. He's using the old Funkasaurus, the Somebody Call My Mama music, and he's loving it. Tyler Breeze is at the peak of his, gorgeous Tyler Breeze selfie era, pre-Breezango Tyler Breeze. They're about to start the match when they're interrupted by Alexander Rusev and Lana. Rusev comes out at the control of Lana, beats the crap out of both of them. Obviously, it's a no contest. This is back when Rusev had no shoes on, and it's a nothing segment. I want to be clear about this. It's an absolutely nothing. Xavier Woods doesn't get to do anything. Tyler Breeze doesn't get to do anything. We don't get a match, and Rusev is just stomping people. But it's just so funny to know that Xavier Woods went on the path that he did to form the New Day, one of the most famous factions / tag teams WWE's had in recent memory. Tyler Breeze went on to do Breezango, which did a lot of babyface comedy stuff on NXT or on SmackDown, and then came back home to NXT, which is kind of nice. Rusev is now Miro, and he's beating up game consoles and bragging about being on Twitch. And Lana is taking a record number of table bumps. Everybody Everybody comes out of this segment a bit weird, don't they? And then we get to the main event. The main event is Bo Dallas and Adrian Neville. I don't know why I clapped right there. Bo Dallas and Adrian Neville for a... I can speak, I swear. Bo Dallas and Adrian Neville in a ladder match for the NXT Championship. Now, how the hell did we get here? Neville beat Zayn on November 27th for the #1 contendership. Neville won by count... Sorry. Neville beat Sami Zayn in a #1 contenders match on November 27th to become the #1 contender. He then went on to face Bo Dallas and won by countout. 2 weeks later, there was a lumberjack match that ended when Tyler Breeze interfered. Neville beat Dallas in a beat the clock challenge to get himself yet another chance at the title, and Triple H came out on February 5th to announce that the match would not only take place at Arrival, but that it would be the first ever NXT ladder match. And it's always weird to see the rigging of it, because if you remember the old square looking NXT Championship, the belt, the strap on that was thick. You weren't going to use the typical ring that WWE used for ladder matches at the time, because WWE now, they have that big gold like half moon shaped thing with the WWE logo on it now, don't they? But before, they just had a big sort of wire loop that it went through. And this title, this old title, and I hated this old belt, by the way. Say what you want about the NXT Championships, the NXT tag titles have never looked that great. Both versions of the women's title looked great. This initial version, this square version of the NXT, and it was just because it's just a big X, and at the time, all it did for those of us that watched TNA back in the day was it just made us think that it was an X Division title. And that's not what you want to go for, is it? Shawn Michaels comes out to hang the belt for all the obvious reasons, comes out, jokes around a little bit, talks about how people keep asking him for one more match, and, you know, he got himself winded going down to the ring. As a joke, he had a new Mr. WrestleMania DVD that he was trying to shill, and he talked about what it meant to be here for the upstart, the history of this new brand, etc., and talking about what these guys were about to go through in a ladder match, because he's got a little bit of history in ladder matches. It was a nice little touch. It didn't overstay its welcome, and once again, you know, he's Triple H's buddy, and he's a ladder match guy, and they want to make the main event for the title seem important, so you get Mr. WrestleMania out there, who's got a Mr. WrestleMania DVD to prove it. Adrian Neville's music was always good. It sounded like a really, really hyper video game bit of stuff. And like I said about Sami Zayn at the beginning of the show, Bo Dallas's music is just sort of like generic Rock 7, if Sami Zayn's music is generic Rock 5, obviously. Series of kicks by Neville to start, and a boot and a double drop kick, a trip off the ropes by Bo, stomping on the midsection, elbow shots by Bo, and a ripcord lariat, tree of woe by Neville. Bo Dallas goes to the outside to grab the first ladder. Neville drop kicks the ladder into Bo, follows with a suicide dive. Neville eats the apron and the steps on the outside, kicks to the head by Bo, a backdrop on the ramp by Neville. Bo tosses a ladder at Neville to knock him off another ladder. Neville's going up the ladder. He says, okay, I can't get up that ladder, but I will throw this other ladder at you to get you off the ladder. And just the sound. I do love, as cheesy as it is, I do love the black and yellow striped NXT ladders. It was a nice, neat little touch. Neville escapes, tossing Bo off the ladder. Hangman by Bo, who staples Neville in the corner with the bottom. You know what I mean by staple. He takes the bottom portion with the feet and sort of plants him in the corner. Tornado DDT by Neville. Both men collide off the ladders and they fall. Corner beatdown by Bo. A mic check into the corner turnbuckle by Neville. Neville tosses Bo into a ladder into the corner. They trade some blows at the top of the ladder. Round kick by Neville as they fall off the top. He gets tossed off the top turnbuckle by Bo. Bo buckle bombs Neville off the ladder that he was climbing into a ladder that is wedged in the corner. So it's a buckle bomb. It's a high buckle bomb off one ladder into another ladder. Once again, boot by Neville, who power slams Bo onto the ladder, hits the red arrow on Bo on the ladder, climbs up for the belt, and Adrian Neville is your new NXT champion at 16 minutes, 2 seconds. Now, look at the lineage of this title at this point. If you go through, as I say, the initial champion being Seth Rollins, look what he's gone on to do. Look at the second champion, Big E, and what he's gone on to do in very different ways. People want him to main event WrestleMania. It's not going to happen, sorry. But he's gone on to become, like I said about Xavier Woods, he's gone on to become one of the most famous factions, most famous tag teams, most decorated tag team in history. And he's your current IC champion. Then you get Bo Dallas, who's Bo Dallas. Then you got Adrian Neville now, who went on to become Neville, who is now Pac, because he was Pac before, and now he's doing the AEW stuff. Will I admit that he wasn't utilized to his full potential in WWE? Obviously. Am I going to take a shot at him for being in AEW now? Absolutely not. I like Pac. I like Neville. I liked Adrian Neville here. I did like, what is it, Austin, or Aaron Gray, that was his tag team partner, and then immediately something happened to him and he had to leave, and then you had Neville and Graves were the tag team champions for a while. Which really just leads you into a whole separate conversation about the sad early ending of Corey Graves' career, but we don't need to do that because we don't want to be sad at the end of the very first episode of NXT Rewind. But after the show, as I've said, Dallas got one more rematch for the title and then went on to SmackDown. I believe Adrian Neville's next major opponent is Tyson Kidd. Tyson Kidd's another tragic early ending of a career, which is really, really sad. Cesaro went on, as we said, to win the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Paige debuted on Raw and beat AJ Styles there. AJ Lee for the Divas Championship, necessitating the new tournament for the women's title in NXT. And Sami Zayn would go on to feud with Corey Graves, who was making fun of him for having losing efforts in awesome matches with Cesaro. So it's a 2-hour show, and there's only 5 matches on it, and a couple of them are not more than 5 minutes. They did a lot of table setting here for what we now know the TakeOver brand to be. Anyways, that's it. That's the end of the first episode of NXT Rewind. I hope you guys like this. I hope you guys will hop on board with this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get to NXT TakeOver Toronto eventually, and I can tell you all about being there. But in the meantime, I've been Spaz, your YWC reality check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation. Keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I will talk to each and every last one of you later, but for right now, I'm tagging out. Bye, guys.